in elementary school, there was a running joke with the teachers talking about how they couldn't afford things that any basic person should. Me, being a kindergartner, never understood that well until I was in middle school, and I realized the sad truth that many teachers really can't afford things that every person should, and that they often had to pay for their own school supplies out of pocket. America's education industry, or system, needs to change, and many of the problems with the education system are divisions in race, in student education, poverty areas, and with teachers' qualifications. Many students in our education system that happen to be in areas below the poverty line are stuck in a cycle of poverty because their parents end up in a cycle where they start off in the same place that these children are starting off, with no opportunities, and then end up growing up not going to further their education, and then have children who also can't further their education. According to Pfeffer in 2018, a growing body of research suggests that health plays an important role in the educational attainment of children in the United States, which means that if our parents aren't getting the opportunities to further their education, the likelihood of a student going to further their education with the risk of becoming more in poverty is going to never change. So they never get a higher education, they never get out of their place in the structure of classes. Now, on top of all that, races also play a part in it, because a lot of the places that are below poverty line happen to also be places where people of color and Hispanics are the highest population. According to Knopf, 12.8 million students experience funding gaps in racially concentrated districts where 75% of the students are non-white. That is a very high number of students not getting equal education just because of where they're living and what their skin is. This shouldn't be happening, and this needs to change. And where these schools are being underfunded, they're also being in areas where they don't place good teachers, because everybody knows that in order to learn, you need a good teacher, because that's the whole fundamental of learning. And whenever these teachers are underqualified, they can't do their job. According to Goldaber in 2020, given that teacher effectiveness has been found to be the most important schooling resource linked to students' achievement, addressing these teacher quality gaps can help close gaps between advantaged and disadvantaged schools. We can close these gaps if we have the resources, funding, and teachers. They are targeting teachers to not hire them in places where more of the population that is white live. Teachers that are underqualified can only get jobs in these schools that they can't even get a living wage in almost. And those who are able to teach are at a higher demand, obviously, so they're the ones that are getting the jobs in the schools that are actually funded, leaving the gap even wider. Now the gap can close. We can close the gap by doing what I just mentioned, hiring teachers in areas that aren't where they can only get a job. And also by redirecting funds to the schools where the population is people of color and below the poverty line. Because people that live in those places The students often live off of those schools because they go there where their parents are probably working all day and night to feed them and afford a place to live. And on top of that, they probably get most of their food there. And since the schools are underfunded, they often can't afford free lunches sometimes. And schools nowadays are even able to do after-school programs, which offer kids free meals after school in case parents can't afford it. This is a starting point in closing the gap, and I am sure that it is just going to keep closing as America becomes more progressive and aware of the gap of classes and people. Thank you for listening to me tonight. I'm sure that you guys have learned a lot about how America's education gap is very big and that we can close it, and that many of the places that are being underfunded are places where people can be people of color. Thank you for listening to me.